Hi, hey Russ here. Welcome back to the shop. I talked about it before. There's a group out there in the Google Group.com, and it's called the Legacy Ornamental Group. And this is about that group. There's a particular subject out there that just came up in the last couple of weeks about the new Legacy Drive Hub, and it referred to a video that Legacy put out about their new drive hub and faceplates. And actually, it's pretty impressive. I liked it, and I like the product that they have there. But usually, most of the stuff that they sell through there, it's made for those guys that make 5,000 pieces a year of something, and so you can spend the money. But for us poor folk that are retired or have just a small hobby shop, and we have the machine, we still like to do some of the things that they do without having to spend all that money. Let me give you a good example. 13, 15 years ago, when I first bought my machine, this was the connection of choice to mount your pieces to do the milling. You use the index hub, and it went into the Morris taper, and then you had these hubs that you put on your piece, and then they would just fit together, and that's how you mounted it to the headstock on your Legacy. And it would be pushed up against it with the tailstock, and that's how it locked in, centered, and was registered exactly every time you take it out and put it back in. It's a great idea. It's a great setup. I like this, and it has some advantages at times. But at the same time, the problem that you run across is if you're doing 4 legs, because you're doing a table, let's say, that's great. But what if you're doing a set of balusters and you got to do 100 of them? I don't want to go out and buy 100 of these things, quite honestly, and you shouldn't do it. You don't have to. But I've seen in the group, they've talked about, well, they need to buy more hubs because they're going to do a big project. And I just kind of think, why? You don't need to. When I first started off, and after I had my Legacy, one of the first big jobs I sold was doing a bunch of balusters for some guy building a staircase. And he wanted that spiral cut on these balusters. And all my balusters were all obviously the same size to begin with. So all I did was, like here, I had this hub, and I made this. Instead of buying 100 of these hubs and putting it on the end of each one of them so I could mill them all up, all I did is I took one, and I made a faceplate that mounted to the hub. And it's just a piece of plywood with 4 cleats on it, brad nailed and glued in to give me the outside dimensions of my piece of lumber, and a center screw in the center, so that when I put this on there and it's mounted, it has a timing mark. I put my timing mark on my piece here so that when I take it out and I put it back in, if I line the timing mark up, I'm registered again, just like it was if I put the hub on there and kept it on there until I was done. Only now I just take this piece, and every time I grab a leg to do it, I would put it into the hub and then put the hub back onto my machine. When I was done, I'd take it out, pull it apart, use this for the next piece. And then when I did the next billing, I could get them all out. They have the timing mark. I just make sure I lined everything up. I can put it back in, and I could do all 100 balusters and only used one hub to do them all by making this simple hub plate. And basically, this is a face plate, is what it really is, that attaches to the indexing hub. And a while back, I did a thing on how to make face plates and how easy it is to do. If you're using the threaded part, it's real tricky to do it. But by using the 4-jaw chuck and using this square block method to a regular piece of MDF, I make face plates that go into the jaws without any problem, and they're always in place, and they're always centered and straight. And so I make these up a dozen at a time and go through them little by little as I need them. So like I have one that is made up with this same 1/2-inch configuration, because I do a lot of wood where I start with a 1.5 by 1.5-inch block. So guess what? I don't have to mount a hub to this or anything. I just grab my faceplate with that already configured on this one. It's marked that way. I can grab it off my shelf, and now I can use this to do 1 or 20, and I don't have to put the hub on each one of those and then take it off after I'm done like I had to before. The faceplate is a much, much better way to do it. Now, the only thing you have to remember is the problem you run across is the indexing. And they talk about how with that locking nut that they use on the hub, and then they lock it down once they get it all registered. Well, you can do that with the faceplate too, believe it or not. You just put it on your 4-jaw chuck. And what I did was, for the chuck, you take you take a nut that is a 1 inch by 8 TPI thread, and they're usually pretty wide, 3/4 of an inch or wider. And what you want to do is cut it to where you have a piece that's only about 3/8 of an inch wide, and put that on first onto your threaded thread stock on your headstock. And then you take your piece here, put your hub, your chuck on there all the way, put this on there and lock it down, put your piece on, get it registered to where you want it, to lock it down. And now to index it, you just take this, you have this set, and you bring the locking nut, the inner nut that you put on there first, and jam nut that to the chuck itself, so that you can undo that, turn your chuck to exactly where you want it, then lock that jam nut back down, and you've got the same thing. And now you can index your faceplate to your index to start with, very easily and very quickly. So just take the nut, make up the nut, put it on there first, and when you screw that all down, you have something to lock to. And that's all you have to do. So you don't need that locking nut that they sell. You don't need these hubs particularly. They're handy to have. I wouldn't say it's bad not to have them, but unless you're doing a lot of work, it's hard to justify what it costs to buy those. And so faceplate is a very inexpensive way of changing this out without having to spend a lot of money. And the next time you got to do 100 balusters, this is a lot easier to make than to mount 100 of these and take them back off, much less having to buy 100 of these things to do the job. So, just a thought. I think that Legacy has a lot of good stuff. I like their hub idea. I really like their faceplates and the way they adapt to different things. But what I see there, because I'm just a small shop, what I see there is ideas of how to make things myself that mimic what they do with their specialized machine work and all. And that's great for the big boys. But for us poor little guys that are hobbyists like you and me, I think you'll find this actually works just as well. And it's a heck of a lot cheaper than going there. So what it's worth, yeah, they're handy to have, but you don't need to have 20 or 30 or 50 of them. Most of the time, there's your ticket. Anyway, that's my thought about it. We had talked about it, and I think faceplates are much better than using the indexing hub. And like I said, you can index it. I don't know what else I can say about it. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below or leave them at the Google group, Legacy Ornamental Mill group, and I'll try to respond to it if you have questions. But most importantly, I really want to thank you for stopping by, and please come back again, because there's going to be a lot more going on around here. You have a good day.